The evening was dark. The black sky was hung low above our Midwestern town. My dad and I had been storm chasing several times together, recording some of the most spectacular lightning strikes a camera has ever seen. We would sit on the front porch when any big storm was coming through with a glass of Buffalo Trace bourbon and our favorite cigars. He liked Romeo and Juliet. I liked anything sweet. That was just a tradition of ours, with that electric feel in the air, with the booming thunder and brightening of the night with the lightning. But as of late, that ritual had been torn to shreds. I just moved out and live over 100 miles away. It was as if the call regarding his hospitalization had come as a bolt from the blue. What appeared to be a minor problem of a vitamin deficiency snowballed into a nightmare culminating in emergency open-heart surgery. That kept all of us on edge. He wasn't even 50 yet, and I couldn't stand the thought of losing him. Weeks later, he was home, but recovery was slow. He'd lost a lot of muscle mass and walked with a cane, though he could stroll around the cul-de-sac once or twice a day. He filled his time by watching Blacklist and learning Spanish. When I visited, we fell into our old routine, binge-watching YouTube channels like Brandon Herrera, Demolition Ranch, and Wendigoon. That evening, I looked at the digital clock. It read 7:58 p.m. when we were laughing our heads off watching videos of explosions and spooky tales. There was a light dancing across the sky as the rumble of distant thunder began. Nothing out of the ordinary at first, but this low rumble grew louder and was a sound that felt off, like it was in the wrong key. I turned and saw my dad was sleeping on the couch shirtless, with his 11-inch scar across his chest visible. Immediately, a huge wave of sympathy and thanks that he was still alive washed over me. The room was suddenly ablaze with light, as if daytime had shattered the night. I looked out of the window. The sky was black, but from the northeast a ball of fire loomed. My father suddenly sat upright in bed, his eyes wide with fear, and shouted, "The sun is on fire!" "What do you mean?" "Of course it's on fire, it's the sun," I asked. As I walked to the window, the yellow disk now spread across the darkness, sending forth great bolts of fire and lightning that shrieked across the sky as if the sun were screaming at us. "We gotta get out of here," he shouted in a growing panic. "Wait, we can't just run out into that," I said, holding his arm tightly. These flares curled beside the house, igniting the parched grass of our yard and bubbling and melting the siding as if it was wax. The heat simply enveloped us. This reminded me of how helpless I really am. My dad was frozen in shock, and instinctively we raced to the basement, the light of the flares still piercing through curtains of the small basement windows. "Hey, remember that storm we chased with the 90-mile-per-hour winds in Nebraska?" he said suddenly, desperation in his voice. "We thought we were invincible then." "Yeah, but this is different. This isn't just a storm, Dad," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. For what seemed like hours, we sat in the basement huddled together, the sound of crackling flames and the reverberation of thunder sounding like some sort of demonic symphony. "We faced worse, right?" I tried to reassure him, though my own heart was racing with fear. "Worse?" he replied, his eyes darting around the room. "This isn't just worse. This is something else." Time blurred. And the firestorm raged on, and we clung to each other, our breaths paced in panicked gasps. I tried to distract my dad by talking about completely mundane things. But again, the heavy heat and the feeling of being wrapped in a fiery tornado pressed in around us. I wish I had been there when I started, but he cut me off. Don't. We're together now. That's what counts, he said, his voice shaking yet firm. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the fierce brightness began to dim, and the turmoil outside gradually subsided. The shapes of our neighbors' houses reemerged. Their familiar outlines reappeared through the boiling haze. A surreal stillness began to set in. First traces of dawn struggled through the darkness, and all of a sudden I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. "We made it," I managed to whisper, my heart swelling in gratitude. We had finally breathed a sigh of relief. I glanced over at that digital clock on the wall. 8:05 p.m.